that you would share with the EU about Palestinian women's role in peace and security.
Thank you very much, Triplan. And dear friends of gender equality and gender champions here in the room, I first allow me to thank you and women in Norway for organizing this event. I think it's really important. And also to the colleagues here in the panel. So just let me start by thanking all the women in this room for your strive for peace, and I think it's really an inspiration for me and for the European Union, and it's really crucial to listen and learn from you, and this is also what I'm reporting back to Brussels and our capitals. What I would like to share with the EU is that Palestinian women are very strong and resilient, and that there's so much energy and power here, and that they do have a very important role in peace and security. But there needs to be more space for this role as well here. And I want to take the opportunity to tackle this from three different elements: rights, representation, and resources. And when it comes to rights, I think, unfortunately, Palestinian women does not have all the rights that they are entitled to. I mean, first, it's of course the occupation that lays a special burden on women and girls, especially in terms of hindrance of access and movement and all other aspects. But there are also still many laws in the Palestinian legal system that are still not favorable for women's empowerment. For example, Palestine has acceded several human rights treaties, as you know, which was a very important step, I think, to statehood. But however, 7 years after this the accession, many of those treaties have not yet been implemented in the Palestinian legislation fully. So Palestinian women don't enjoy all the rights that they are entitled to. And for example, one of them is the CEDAW that has been mentioned here before. And I think there are also many misconceptions on what CEDAW stands for, and I think it's important to raise awareness about this, and in order to get it implemented, and also to implement the family protection bill that is supposed to protect women that are exposed to violence. But I think there are also structural and social hindrances that contributes to lower participation in the labor market, for example. We need to remember that gender equality is also good economics. Many of the European countries only created their welfare states when women started to come out on the labor market and contribute to the labor market. So I think that would also be beneficial for Palestine if more women came out in the labor market. The second thing is representation, which is also an important part of Resolution 1325. Here we can also see that there can be improvements of representation of women in politics and in business life. But looking at the Palestinian leadership, there are very few women, which means that 50% of the population is not really represented in political life. And I think here elections would be a very good opportunity for women to come forward, and we saw the great interest for elections before they were cancelled last April. And from the EU, we are strongly supporting, of course, Palestinian elections, which we think it's necessary to move forward and to end the division between Gaza and the West Bank. But representation is also important in peace negotiations, because the main question is of course how to ensure women's needs and interests if there would be in a peace process. Now we don't have a peace process, and there's no table, negotiating table for women to sit in, but but I think it's important to prepare. Peace agreements are normally signed by political leaders, and you have more. It's shown that you have more sustainable peace if you have women at the negotiation table. But in reality, if you look at peace negotiations in conflicts, there are very few women in them in general. We see examples from Syria or Yemen, where we had women's advisory groups in peace negotiations. That is fine, but still, they're still outside the actual decision process, and the influence is limited. And the strongest impact is, of course, if the negotiators are also women. And since negotiators often come from political parties, that's why it's so important to have also women included in the political structures and in the political parties. So it's important to create a society where women are participating in political life and involved in the political parties, and this to engage in this. And that's, of course, another reason to have elections in Palestine. And from the EU, where I think important was prepared to support women in that. So I think I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Maria. شكرا على المداخلة وإلقاء الضوء على أيضا كيف يرى الاتحاد الأوروبي هذه القضايا وهذه الاشتباكات وهذه الأولويات. وأنتقل الآن لضيفنا دكتور إيميليو. دكتور إيميليو دافيد is a Palestinian Chilean lawyer and a PhD holder in political science, specializing in constitutional matters, international law, and human rights. Dr. David, I will be asking you both questions based on your request because they're also interrelated. So as a Palestinian descent practicing law and mobilizing for change in a country with a strong Palestinian diaspora, how would you leverage the diaspora in building solidarity that would advance the agenda of the Palestinian women's movement, especially on WPS women peace and security issues? And also, in your opinion, what kind of narrative should Palestinians have to be able to reach out effectively and mobilize solidarity and support among younger generations and emerging leaders, for example, among university students that you are, I assume, very also familiar with?
Thank you so much. Well, let me say that being the only man here and almost in the entire room, one feels very intimidated, so be lenient. But I requested both questions to be asked at the same time because they are closely related, and actually I had prepared something in one response that I would like to read to you actually for time reasons and precision in my language. I wanted to present to you a general comparative analysis of similar social and political situations in Palestine and Latin America that somehow can help us to draw parallels and produce knowledge necessary to create possibilities for solidarity between Latin American and Palestinians, and more particularly between Latin American and Palestinian women. I believe that women's rights cannot be understood or advanced without considering the general and social political context. And that implies to bring not only the occupation, but also the PA to this conversation. Of course, occupation is the biggest obstacle, but the PA also plays a role, and this goes beyond some problematic laws here or there. Let's start by Palestine, where I live taught and researched on law and international law and human rights for almost 11 years. And then we will look at Latin America, and in particular to Chile, where I was born, I studied, I lived until 20 years ago. My views on both my countries are extremely critical, but I think they are essential to really understand their social and political context and think of possibilities of solidarity. In Palestine, as has become clear in the last 24 years, the regime inaugurated by the Oslo Accords between the Palestinian Liberation Organization and Israel is nothing but the latest version of the schemes of domination of Palestinians, and therefore the Palestinian Authority, the PA, the very product of Oslo, including its political, social, economic, and legal practices, should be central to the investigation and understanding of the conditions to which Palestinians are subjected today. While, and we all know that, a minority enjoys the privileges offered by Oslo's structural opportunities for corruption, most Palestinians are not only subjected to Israeli oppression, but to the violence of their own authority as well. To secure these privileges and the necessary acquiescence of Israel and PA's donors, the Palestinian leadership has created what to me resembles very much to a sort of constitutional dictatorship. It is a regime whose defining characteristic is not so much its overt, unashamed disregard of law, but rather the constant resort to a strategic interpretation of legal norms to bring its violence into the law. Far from abandoning or suspending law, the PA uses law as an integral part of its strategy to normalize its own violence, and in many ways that includes women.